Mass Transportation and Evacuation in the Emergency Operations Center. Welcome to a just-in-time training based on the Bay Area Catastrophic Earthquake Mass Transportation and Evacuation Plan. Historical events have taught us that transportation in and out of an impacted area during times of disaster demands a high level of coordination. To support the mass transportation and evacuation function, it is your job to coordinate with your colleagues inside and outside of the EOC, not only to prioritize transportation routes for inbound first responders, but also to safely transport survivors out of an affected area.
If you're new to the Emergency Operations Center, one of the key things you need to understand about mass transportation and evacuation is the fact that in the Bay Area, we're significantly constrained by the available transportation systems, road networks, limited rail, and only a few major airports. And we've got a lot of people, and they all want to move in the same direction at the same time. And so it's going to be a matter of prioritizing not just the resources that are available, but the actual targeted groups that we're going to support with evacuation.
You've checked in, received the appropriate vest, and been assigned a workspace. You may not have worked in an EOC before, or maybe you're not familiar with mass transportation and evacuation operations. That's okay. There are resources and people that will help you be successful. Although this time is stressful, the EOC team will work with you for a smooth response and expedient recovery. During this 30-minute just-in-time training, we will introduce the operational phases of mass transportation and evacuation in the EOC, your core responsibilities, and how to prioritize objectives within the first 60 days following an event. This just-in-time training is one in a series based on the 8 Bay Area Catastrophic Earthquake Plans. The introductory video includes basic EOC responsibilities and an introduction to the Standardized Emergency Management System, or SEMS. Whether you are in an EOC during the first, second, or third time period of the disaster response, it may be helpful to refer to the Bay Area Regional Catastrophic Earthquake Mass Transportation and Evacuation Plan, or your local government or operational area mass transportation and evacuation plan as you watch this training. Keep in mind that your role in supporting mass transportation and evacuation operations in an EOC may be slightly different based on your level of government. Stick around to test your knowledge of supporting mass transportation and evacuation in an EOC with a quiz at the end of this video. To help you carry out your role in the EOC, it is important to first understand the following operational phases of mass transportation and evacuation: situational awareness and establishing priority routes, transporting first responders, evacuating the public, and facilitating ongoing transportation for public re-entry into the community. Situational awareness is the phase in which you determine the condition of priority transportation routes and identify open spaces for staging areas to receive incoming first responders. Bridges and overpasses must be checked for structural safety. During this phase, you will coordinate with others in the EOC, including debris removal and logistics support staff in the EOC.
Debris removal is an absolutely critical function. Nothing really can start with recovery until you get the stuff out of the way.
Priority routes are established to transport first responders into the impacted area and evacuate survivors out of the area.
We're trying to determine the priorities as to what directions or where we want people to be moved to, and what areas of ingress and egress need to be cleared so that we're able to get them safely there. And that's really the responsibility of the EOC. They're going to establish the priorities. We need to make sure that we're able to clear roads to get people to an area of safety.
Bay Area transportation agencies and their resources are coordinated through the Bay Area Metropolitan Transportation Commission, or MTC, which maintains communication with the Bay Area Water Emergency Transportation Authority, or WETA. State agencies such as Caltrans and the California Highway Patrol, or CHP, coordinate resources directly with the SOC or REOC. Caltrans and the U.S. Coast Guard will work with MTC and WIDA to prioritize major ground and maritime transportation routes and coordinate with operational area EOCs and local law enforcement agencies to manage evacuation procedures. Look to Appendix B in the regional plan for priority transportation route maps showing estimated damages to surface transportation systems and proposed locations for local pickup points, bases, and camps. In the second operational phase, EOC and external partners will work together to support transportation for first responders into the affected area. First responders from outside the region will check in at assigned bases, camps, or logistics staging areas which manage their deployment as well as the deployment of equipment and commodities. Safely evacuating survivors out of the area is the third operational phase and requires coordination with the Care and Shelter branch in the EOC to move people to shelters or out of the region. An EOC integrates FEMA guidance by using the following 7 phases for public evacuation into the response timeline. Analysis and evaluation is a key component of situational awareness. Local conditions, including a hazardous materials release or the loss of potable and wastewater systems, drive the decision to evacuate. Notification messages are then developed and delivered to residents. Preparation to move involves the reestablishment of transportation into and out of an impacted area. Movement and en route support encompasses the evacuation of residents and provision of critical services such as food and water. Reception and support addresses special needs of evacuees, such as tourists or others needing long-term housing. Return and recovery includes the support of evacuees back to safe and habitable areas. Although many people will self-evacuate with little or no need for government help, other outbound evacuees will be relying on mass transportation and evacuation services to help them reach a final destination. Evacuees may first be directed from damaged buildings or homes to designated pickup points, and then from pickup points to shelters or other housing options. It is the local government's responsibility to manage and operate pickup points. Transportation needs for people with disabilities and others with access and functional needs must always be considered.
So it's very important to expand the coordination with the paratransits and other type of services that may have wheelchair accessible vehicles. You gotta find experts on access and functional needs who can help you make good decisions, but most importantly, help you get the resources that you're gonna need to respond properly and thinking of the short and the long-term processes that you have to deal with.
Also keep in mind that some survivors may refuse to evacuate without their pets. Work with agencies such as local humane societies to develop strategies for dealing with pet evacuations.
If you're new to an emergency operations center, just think how you would feel if you were separated from your family or your pets in a disaster, and try and make plans to lower their anxiety. Plan for including schools and status of schools and status of shelters that have access to pets, and make plans for them to evacuate with their pets.
Re-entry is the last operational phase. Check with your law enforcement branch on how you can support the re-entry plan for ensuring the area community members are returning to is safe. Keep in mind the primary responsibility for mass transportation and evacuation falls upon local government EOCs to coordinate with local transportation agencies and law enforcement agencies, while an operational area EOC will work with county and/or regional agencies for resource support. Your understanding of local, regional, and state transportation authorities, as well as these operational phases for mass transportation and evacuation, will help you navigate your role in the EOC. As a part of the mass transportation and evacuation team in the EOC, you will support the movement of first responders into an affected area while simultaneously evacuating affected populations out. Your responsibilities include communication and coordination, resource management, information management, and public information. Communication and coordination refers to your role, the link between government and partners in managing the mass transportation and evacuation function. First, we will discuss coordination with government agencies. You will work with your counterparts as appropriate at the field level and in EOCs at the local government, operational area, and regional levels, the State Operations Center or SOC, and the Joint Field Office or JFO, where federal resource coordination occurs. Inside the EOC, the coordination of mass transportation and evacuation is multidisciplinary, but for this training, your role would likely be as the transportation coordinator in the logistics or operations section. You will work directly with other branch and section staff within your EOC and EOCs at other levels. For example, you may contact an EOC colleague working with debris management in the operations section to identify debris clearance priorities to establish priority transportation routes. Or you would coordinate with the law enforcement branch to collect information about evacuation priorities. You may also work closely with a care and shelter branch to ensure that people with disabilities and others with access and functional needs, as well as people with pets, are transported safely to adequate facilities after evacuation. Don't be afraid to ask your colleagues questions or refer to your EOC supervisor when you need help. And keep in mind where you sit and who you might communicate with may be different given the EOC that you work in. You will also communicate and coordinate with partners beyond the EOC regarding mass transportation and evacuation. You may find agency and partner contact information in a designated EOC binder, or you can ask your section chief.
The EOC staff during a mass transportation and evacuation function can expect to work with a whole number of regional and local organizations, governmental, transit agencies, but it's critical that the EOC staff look outside of those traditional resources, look internal to the community. Community-based organizations, nonprofits, philanthropic organizations maintain transportation assets that are really not only uniquely tied to the populations they serve, but there's a level of trust there that you can't hope to replicate on your own.
Some key partners include California Highway Patrol, or CHP, Caltrans, or Department of Transportation, Metropolitan Transportation Commission, or MTC, Water Emergency Transportation Authority, or WETA, paratransit agencies, non-governmental organizations, or NGOs, community-based organizations, or CBOs, faith-based organizations, or FBOs, and private sector businesses. MTC is the transportation planning, coordinating, and financing agency for 9 counties within the Bay Area region. They play a significant role in coordinating information and resources among local and regional transportation agencies while working directly with the Cal OES, Coastal Region EOC, or REOC, or the Department of Transportation at the SOC. It is also essential to communicate and coordinate with NGOs and CBOs. Paratransit agencies and independent living centers, for example, help serve homebound populations such as people with disabilities, the elderly, and others with access and functional needs that will require mass transportation and evacuation services. National pet organizations can assist with animal care and transportation in disasters. And you will also communicate with a variety of businesses in the private sector to utilize available transportation resources to assist with the incident response. Let's review what we've learned about communication and coordination. Regularly communicate with government and partners inside and outside of your EOC. Partners include transportation organizations such as MTC and others including NGOs, CBOs, and private sector businesses. Resource management involves brokering various types of requests that go both directions. It is likely that in your role, you will make requests to other levels of government and also respond to requests that you receive.
Identify their needs and really try to find the resources that were available, whether they're community or governmental, to put those people into a good place, because it's going to be a while before they can return home.
Specific transportation-related resources include vehicles, staff, and fuel. Road-based transportation assets are sourced from local transit agencies and transportation service providers. These can include private sector touring and school buses. The U.S. Coast Guard oversees all maritime operations. Maritime transportation resources, such as ferry boats, are coordinated by WITA, including those operated by the Golden Gate Bridge Highway and Transportation District. And passenger rail cars and locomotives, some sourced from Caltrans, Amtrak, Division of Rail, Altamont Corridor Express, and Caltrain. Private, governmental, and community-based organizations such as paratransit agencies, school districts, independent living centers, volunteer organizations, and even local community emergency response teams, or CERT, may have valuable transportation assets and equipment. If needed, FEMA coordinates and provides additional resources beyond those in the region, including air support. It is your responsibility to attempt to fulfill requests by seeking out resources within your jurisdiction first. Turn to others in the logistics section to help guide you to additional available resources. If resources are not available in your jurisdiction, you may make requests to higher levels of government by completing and submitting an EOC resource request form. Ask your section chief where to access your EOC resource request form. Be aware that resource requests and other forms may be prepared electronically using a software tool such as Web EOC if available. Let's review what we've learned about resource management. You'll receive requests from other levels of government. To fulfill these requests, you will use the EOC resource request forms. Types of resources include vehicles, staff, supplies, equipment, and fuel. Consider people with disabilities and others with access and functional needs, including those with service animals or companion pets when fulfilling requests. After an incident, information management is critical for mass transportation and evacuation. You will be responsible to compile and share a variety of information. This information will be used for situation status reports.
The EOC provides a very important nerve center, or in effect, information hub for identifying not only where there may have been impacts to a transportation system, but where emergency services may need to avoid or actually may need to deploy.
Critical information you will need to track includes the status of transportation systems throughout the impacted areas, including the identification of priority transportation routes from field personnel and EOC staff, conditions of major transportation agencies and their related services, and structural integrity of roads, bridges, overpasses, airports, maritime ports, and harbors. You will also want to track additional transportation status information, including access to critical facilities, the transportation needs of incoming responders, and details regarding potential transportation hazards. You will need to document the number of people needing to evacuate and the transportation needs of people at shelters and those leaving the region. Let's review the essentials of information management. Regularly communicate with internal and external partners to collect necessary information about the incident's impact on mass transportation and evacuation systems, including structural integrity of roads and bridges. Document incoming first responder transportation needs and details about the impacted area and out-of-area evacuation destinations, as well as evacuees and available transportation resources. Data you collect will be used for situation status reports. The public will need immediate instruction about how to safely evacuate from an affected area, as well as ongoing status information regarding available transportation resources and road conditions. In the EOC, you are responsible to provide accurate and timely information to the Public Information Officer, or PIO, who is responsible for message delivery to the public. Depending on your EOC, you may also send this information to the Joint Information Center, or JIC. The information you provide may be shared with 211, or sometimes another designated number, depending on the area, which is a toll-free 24-hour call center that connects callers with community resources and provides disaster-related information. In a disaster or emergency, due to constantly changing conditions, sharing immediate messages to the public regarding transportation and evacuation procedures is critical. Public information is usually released as an informational message that communicates details about the event, actions the public can take, and updates on emergency response activities. An emergency alert is a government resource used to convey an urgent message to the public regarding how to protect themselves against an immediate threat to human life or safety. These are issued through alert and warning systems at various EOC levels.
Disseminating messaging about mass transportation needs, again, to be a team. Your mass transportation provider needs to be involved. Government needs to be involved because they have access to the alerting system. And also your PIO, who can access social media and the media.
Public messages about evacuation must take into account people who are deaf or hard of hearing, deaf-blind, and blind or low vision, as well as those with disabilities and others with access and functional needs. Here are examples of public messages that you may need to provide the PIO.
Report to your local pickup point to be transported to a safe location. Public and private animal care service agencies will assist with transporting animals during an evacuation effort. Re-entry to the impacted area will be coordinated by local government public safety agencies and allowed when water, power, and sewer services have been restored and all safety concerns have been eliminated.
Look for templates for a variety of pre-scripted public messages in the local, operational area, and regional mass transportation and evacuation plans. Let's review your EOC role in getting information out to the public. Emergency alerts and information messages are two common categories of communication with the public. Social media is expected to be heavily used to share immediate information to the public. Contact the PIO and the JIC to coordinate critical messages. Utilize 211 services to convey important public messages. Locate message templates and modify pre-scripted messages as appropriate. Consider communication for people with disabilities and others with access and functional needs. Look to your plan's response timeline as a guideline for prioritizing objectives within each disaster response time period. Operational response is focused on the first 60 days following an event, broken into 3 distinct time periods: the first 3 days, or 72 hours, day 4 through 14, and the 6-week span between day 15 and day 60. Priorities within the first 3 days are to develop the situational awareness and establish priority transportation routes to facilitate inbound first responders and outbound evacuations. Core objectives for the first time period include: determine priority transportation routes for debris clearance and incoming first responders. Communicate with the public and private sector transportation partners to assess the status of transportation services and road conditions, as well as the structural safety of bridges and overpasses. Identify the number and destinations of incoming first responders. Identify locations and numbers of evacuees, including people with disabilities and others with access and functional needs, those with service animals and companion pets. Identify destination locations for evacuees. During days 4 through 14, priorities are to organize the necessary resources to move first responders inbound and evacuees outbound. Informing the public of the current status and available transportation resources will be critical. Core objectives for the second time period include: acquire, maintain, and deploy resources such as fuel distribution systems, maintenance support, and law enforcement staff. Continue to move first responders into the affected region. Establish and support the operation of pickup points. Move evacuees based on regional transportation and sheltering capabilities. Establish key messages on available transportation and sheltering resources, as well as evacuation procedures to disseminate through the PIO and JIC. During days 15 to 60, operational focus is on return and recovery goals, including re-entry of evacuated populations. Be aware that some mass transportation operations will extend well beyond 60 days. Core objectives for the third time period include: establish and activate re-entry procedures, coordinate transportation for evacuees to return to their community, support restoration of normal public transit services, provide key public messages through the PIO and the JIC. Refer to your supervisor in the EOC for a checklist to help you establish appropriate priorities and objectives during your EOC assignment.
While we each have a role in an emergency operations center, we really do and absolutely need to operate as a team. Each of us will be coming into a situation with a variety of experiences, whether it be great depth of many years or decades of experience, or brand new in our role. And all of those circumstances are important and a natural part of working together as a team. We can learn from each other, even from those of us who may not have been in that specific environment before.
As a result of this introductory training, you should take away a better understanding of how to support mass transportation and evacuation in an emergency operations center. Here are some resource references to learn more about how mass transportation and evacuation works at various government levels. These include Emergency Support Function 1, Transportation Mass Evacuation Incident Annex to the National Response Framework. Emergency Function 1, Transportation and Emergency Function 13, Law Enforcement Annexes to the State Emergency Plan. Regional Emergency Coordination Plan. San Francisco Bay Area Regional Transportation Emergency Management Plan. Bay Area Emergency Water Transportation System Management Plan. Bay Area Regional Catastrophic Earthquake Mass Transportation and Evacuation Plan. Local and Operational Area Catastrophic Earthquake Mass Transportation and Evacuation Plan. To learn more, visit your local emergency management office or Office of Emergency Services. Let's test your understanding of supporting mass transportation and evacuation while working in an EOC. What level of government is responsible for establishing and operating evacuation pickup points? A. Local. B. Operational area. C. Regional. D. State. Local governments are responsible for the establishment and operations of pickup points. Which of the following components of situational awareness is not used to determine priority transportation routes and operating evacuation pickup points? A. Road conditions. B. Pickup point locations. C. Local convenience stores. D. Bridge and overpass structural safety assessments. When assessing priority routes as a part of situational awareness, you will consider road conditions, bridge and overpass safety, and locations for establishing staging areas. What agency has the authority to initiate and execute re-entry operations? A. Law enforcement. B. Care and Shelter Branch. C. Coroner's Office. D. Metropolitan Transportation Commission. Only the local law enforcement agency will have the authority to initiate re-entry into an impacted area after it has been deemed safe and habitable. What community-based organizations can help you coordinate transportation resources for people with disabilities and others with access and functional needs? A. Paratransit providers. B. School districts. C. Independent living centers. D. Home health care. E. All of the above. All of these agencies may play a key role in helping an EOC reach people with disabilities and others with access and functional needs, and there may be other additional agencies in your community. Thank you for taking the time to test your knowledge about mass transportation and evacuation in the EOC.